My wife Laura and I had been married for 10 years, and every Sunday we made it a tradition to have dinner at our favorite restaurant with our 6-year-old son Liam. We met in college, drawn together by our shared love of literature. Those early days were filled with long talks, mutual support through tough exams, and the spark of young love. Over the years, our bond grew stronger, or so I thought. But looking back, I realized there were signs that something was amiss, signs I chose to ignore. Laura was always a bit of a social butterfly, enjoying her nights out with friends and colleagues from work. I never minded. I trusted her completely. Our Sundays were sacred, though, and it felt like nothing could disrupt this family tradition. But lately I noticed Laura's behavior had started to change subtly. She was more distracted, her phone never left her hand, and she often seemed lost in thought. Still, I chalked it up to stress from her demanding job in marketing. One particular Sunday stood out in my memory. We were at the restaurant and Laura seemed unusually tense. She kept glancing at her phone and excused herself to the restroom more often than usual. I asked her if everything was all right and she brushed it off with a tired smile, saying she was just feeling a bit under the weather. I let it go, not wanting to spoil our evening, but a nagging feeling settled in my gut. The following week I decided to surprise Laura by picking her up from work and taking her to a different restaurant for dinner. As I walked into the lobby of her office building, I saw her getting into a car with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing and seemed very comfortable with each other. My heart sank, but I convinced myself it was just a harmless lift home from a colleague. Despite these growing suspicions, I never expected what was to come. Laura and I continued our Sunday dinners, but the atmosphere was different. There was a distance between us that I couldn't bridge. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on making Liam laugh and ensuring he enjoyed his meals. But each week the feeling of unease grew stronger. One day the pieces started to fall into place. I had taken the day off work and decided to surprise Laura at the restaurant where we usually had our Sunday dinners. I wanted to make a reservation for a special anniversary dinner, hoping to rekindle the romance between us. As I walked in, I saw Laura sitting alone at a table, her eyes glued to the entrance. She didn't notice me. I watched from a distance as the waiter, someone we knew well from our many visits, approached her. He leaned in close, whispered something in her ear, and then walked away with a smirk. Laura glanced around nervously before getting up and heading toward the restroom. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed her, my mind racing with possibilities. I reached the restroom just in time to see her slip inside. My blood ran cold as I realized what might be happening. With a mix of anger and dread, I pushed open the door to the restroom, determined to get to the bottom of this. What I found would shatter my world and force me to confront the reality I had been trying so hard to avoid. The restroom door creaked as I pushed it open, and my pulse quickened with each step I took. The sound of my heartbeat filled my ears, drowning out the bustling noise of the restaurant. As I ventured further inside, the quiet murmurs of conversation from a nearby stall confirmed my worst fears. I crept closer, trying to make out the voices. "Are you sure he suspects nothing?" The waiter's voice was unmistakable, laced with a casual confidence that made my skin crawl. "I'm positive. He has no clue," Laura responded, her tone both reassuring and annoyed. "Just make sure you keep your distance tonight. We can't afford any mistakes." A surge of anger and betrayal swept through me, my hands trembling as I clenched them into fists. The reality of the situation was setting in, and the person I had trusted most was standing on the other side of that door, conspiring with another man. My thoughts raced, replaying every moment we had shared, trying to understand how it had come to this. Suddenly the door opened and the waiter stepped out, nearly bumping into me. His eyes widened in shock, and for a split second, we both froze. Then without thinking, I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the wall. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Laura emerged from the stall, her face a mix of horror and guilt. "William, please, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, stepping toward me with her hands raised in a placating gesture. "Not what it looks like?" I echoed incredulously, my grip on the waiter tightening. "I think it's exactly what it looks like, Laura." The waiter squirmed under my grasp, trying to free himself. "Let go of me, man. This isn't the place for a scene," he he said, attempting to sound authoritative but failing miserably. Ignoring him, I turned my full attention to Laura. How long, Laura? How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been sneaking around with this waiter? Laura's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape from the situation. It just happened, okay? It wasn't planned. I didn't mean for it to go this far. How far has it gone? I shot back, feeling a hollow ache in my chest. How long have you been betraying me? She hesitated, her silence speaking volumes. My grip on the waiter's collar loosened, and I let him go, taking a step back to steady myself. The magnitude of her betrayal was overwhelming, and I struggled to keep my composure. The waiter, seeing his chance, straightened his uniform and tried to regain some semblance of control. Look, man, it's just a fling. No need to blow things out of proportion. Just a fling? I repeated, my voice dangerously low. You've been messing with my family, with my marriage, and you think it's just a fling? Laura's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't find it in myself to feel any sympathy. William, I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you or Liam. It just happened, and I couldn't stop it. The urge to lash out, to scream and break something was almost overpowering, but the thought of Liam waiting for us at home, unaware of the storm brewing, held me back. I couldn't afford to lose control, not now. Get out, I said to the waiter, my voice cold and steady. Leave this restaurant and don't ever come near my wife again. He glanced at Laura, who nodded in resignation. Without another word, he hurried out, leaving Laura and me alone in the restroom. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words and shattered trust. We need to talk, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. But not here. Let's go home. Laura nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. As we walked out of the restroom, the familiar warmth of the restaurant felt foreign and distant. Our once beloved haven had become the backdrop for a betrayal that would forever change our lives. We drove home in silence, the tension between us palpable. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more painful than the last. I knew that whatever conversation awaited us at home, it would not be easy. But I needed answers, and I needed to decide what the future held for us. The next day was Thanksgiving, and both our families were scheduled to gather at our house. The timing couldn't have been worse. Laura and I barely spoke that night, the air thick with unspoken words and tension. As dawn broke, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my head around the events of the previous day. Part of me wanted to call everyone and cancel, but I knew that would raise too many questions. I had to pretend, to put on a facade for Liam's sake, if nothing else. Laura was already up when I came downstairs, bustling around the kitchen as if everything were normal. She had set the table with our best china and was busy preparing the turkey. The smell of roasted vegetables and fresh bread filled the air, but it did little to lift my spirits. "Good morning," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "Morning," I replied, my voice strained. "Need any help?" She shook her head. "No, I've got it under control. Thanks." I forced a smile and went to check on Liam, who was still asleep. Watching him lie there so peaceful and unaware brought a lump to my throat. I wished I could shield him from the storm that was brewing in our lives. As the morning wore on, I threw myself into the preparations, anything to keep my mind occupied. I set up extra chairs, made sure we had enough silverware, and even started decorating the living room with festive touches. All the while, the events of the previous day played on a loop in my mind, gnawing at my sanity. Around noon, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. My parents were early as usual. I plastered on a smile and opened the door, greeting them with hugs and pleasantries. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom, Dad," I said, hoping my voice didn't betray the turmoil inside me. "Happy Thanksgiving, William," my mom replied, pulling me into a tight embrace. "Everything looks wonderful. You've both done a great job." "Thanks, Mom," I said, stepping aside to let them in. Next came Laura's parents, followed by her sister and her family. Each arrival brought a new wave of forced smiles and strained small talk. I could see the same tension in Laura's eyes, though she did her best to hide it. We were both actors in a tragic play, desperately trying to keep up the illusion for the sake of our loved ones. As we gathered around the table for the traditional Thanksgiving meal, I took my seat at the head with Laura on my right and Liam on my left. My father offered to say grace, and we all bowed our heads. His words were filled with gratitude and hope, but I couldn't focus. My mind was elsewhere, trapped in the restroom from the day before. Dinner was a blur of conversation and laughter. I tried to engage, to participate in the joy that everyone else seemed to be feeling, but it was like swimming against a powerful current. My thoughts kept drifting back to the betrayal, the lies, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. "William, could you pass the gravy?" my father asked, snapping me back to the present. "Of course," I said, handing it over and forcing another smile. "Sorry, I was just lost in thought." Throughout the meal, I kept stealing glances at Laura. She was doing a remarkable job of keeping up appearances, laughing at jokes and making small talk as if nothing had happened. But every now and then, our eyes would meet, and the facade would crack for just a moment, revealing the pain and guilt lurking beneath. After dinner, we moved to the living room for dessert and coffee. Liam was showing his grandparents the drawings he'd made at school, and I watched with a mix of pride and sadness. This was supposed to be a time of joy and togetherness, but all I felt was a gnawing emptiness. As the evening wore on and the guests started to leave, my mother pulled me aside. "William, are you all right? You seem a bit off today." I forced a reassuring smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just a lot on my mind with work and everything. Nothing to worry about." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "If you say so, just know that we're here for you, no matter what." "Thanks, Mom," I said, giving her a hug. "I appreciate it." After the last guest had left and the house was quiet again, Laura and I faced each other in the kitchen. The silence between us was deafening. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "I know it wasn't easy." I nodded, too exhausted to say much. "We need to talk, Laura, but not tonight. I can't do it right now." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand." I turned and headed upstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I reached our bedroom, I knew that the hardest conversations were still ahead. But for tonight, all I wanted was to escape into sleep, to find some temporary refuge from the storm. The morning after Thanksgiving, the house felt eerily quiet. The festive decorations and leftover food seemed like remnants of a different life, a happier one that now felt out of reach. Laura and I had avoided the inevitable confrontation for too long. I knew it was time to face the music and make some decisions. I found Laura sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red and puffy from crying. We stared at each other for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. "William, we need to talk," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Yes, we do," I replied, taking a seat across from her. "But first, I need to know the truth. How long has this been going on?" Laura took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "It started a few months ago. I never meant for it to happen, but it did." I felt a surge of anger, but forced myself to stay calm. "Why, Laura? Why did you do this to us?" She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I don't know, it just happened. We started talking and one thing led to another. But it was a mistake, William. I realize that now. I love you and I want to make this work. Please, let's try to fix this." I shook my head, feeling the sting of betrayal all over again. "I don't know if I can do that, Laura. You've broken my trust in a way that's hard to repair." Tears streamed down her face as she reached out to grab my hand. "William, please, I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I can't lose you and Liam. We can get through this." I pulled my hand away, standing up and pacing the room. "Laura, you made a choice. You chose to betray me, to betray our family. I can't just sweep that under the rug. I need time to think, to figure out what I want." She stood up too, desperation in her eyes. "Don't you see? We have a life together, a family. Please don't throw it all away." I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "I'm not the one who threw it away, Laura. You did that the moment you decided to cheat." The days that followed were filled with tension and silence. Laura continued to beg for another chance, but my heart was hardened by the betrayal. I needed space to think, to process everything. One evening, after putting Liam to bed, I told Laura that I had decided to file for divorce. "William, no," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "We can work through this. Don't do this to us," to Liam. "I'm sorry, Laura," I said, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "But I can't live like this. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's not." Her expression changed, a flash of anger replacing the desperation. "If you do this, I'll make sure you regret it," she said, her voice cold. "I'll tell the court that you cheated on me, that you've been neglecting Liam. I'll make sure you lose everything." I stared at her in shock. "What are you talking about? You know that's not true." She shrugged, a bitter smile on her lips. "Courts believe what they want to believe, William. I'll make sure they see things my way. You'll be lucky if you get to see Liam at all." The threat hung in the air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I took a sit. "Why would you do that, Laura? Why would you hurt Liam just to get back at me?" "Because I won't let you take him from me," she said, her eyes blazing with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep my family together." I shook my head, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. "You're willing to destroy everything, to lie and manipulate just to keep control." "I don't have a choice," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't lose Liam. I can't lose you." The realization hit me hard. Laura was willing to go to any lengths to keep her version of our family intact, even if it meant destroying my relationship with Liam. I knew I had to protect myself and my son from the fallout. "Laura, this isn't the way to fix things," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're only making it worse." She crossed her arms, her expression defiant. "I won't let you take him from me, William. You can try to fight me, but I promise you I won't back down." I felt a sense of despair wash over me. The woman I once loved was now a stranger, someone willing to lie and manipulate to get her way. I knew I had to prepare for a battle not just for myself, but for Liam. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations and painful conversations. I gathered evidence, prepared my case, and steeled myself for the fight ahead. Laura's threats echoed in my mind, but I was determined to protect my relationship with Liam. In the weeks that followed, the house that was once a haven of love and warmth became a battlefield of tension and strategy. I spent my days consulting with lawyers and gathering evidence, determined to counter Laura's threats and protect my relationship with Liam. Every night, the silence between Laura and me grew heavier, filled with the weight of unspoken accusations and looming conflicts. I knew that this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Liam, and ensuring he had a stable, loving environment despite the storm tearing our family apart. I couldn't let Laura's threats become a reality. My focus became clear. I had to fight not just for custody, but for the truth to prevail. One afternoon, I met with my attorney, Emily. She was sharp, experienced, and known for her no-nonsense approach. I needed someone like her on my side. "William, we need to gather as much evidence as possible to counter her claims," Emily said, her voice steady and professional. "Do you have any documentation, texts, or emails that can support your case?" I nodded, handing over my phone and a folder filled with printed texts and emails. "I've compiled everything I could find. There's nothing incriminating against me, and these messages show Laura's frequent absences and questionable behavior." Emily flipped through the documents, her brow furrowing in concentration. "This is good, but we need more. Witnesses, character references, anything that can paint a clear picture of your role as a father and her recent behavior." I thought for a moment, then said, "Our neighbors, the ones we've known for years. They've seen me with Liam almost every day. They can testify to my involvement in his life." "Perfect," Emily replied, making a note. "We'll also need to consider a psychological evaluation. It can show that you're a stable and fit parent. Laura's threats to use false information could backfire if we present a solid case." As we discussed strategy, a sense of determination grew within me. I had felt lost and betrayed, but now I had a purpose, a goal to work toward. I left Emily's office feeling more hopeful than I had in weeks. Back at home, the tension was palpable. Laura avoided eye contact, focusing on Liam and pretending everything was normal. But every now and then our gazes would meet, and the unspoken conflict would flare up between us. One evening, as I was helping Liam with his homework, Laura entered the room. She watched us for a moment, her expression unreadable. "William, can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than it had been in days. I looked up, wary but willing to listen. Sure. She led me to the living room, away from Liam's ears. I don't want this to get ugly, she said, her voice trembling. I said things out of anger, and I regret it. Can't we find a way to settle this without dragging Liam through a court battle? I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and sorrow. Laura, I don't want a war either, but you threatened to take Liam away from me. You threatened to lie, to manipulate the truth. How am I supposed to trust you after that? She looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. I was scared, William. I still love you, and the thought of losing everything just made me panic. But I don't want to hurt Liam. He needs both of us. Then we need to be honest and fair, I said firmly. If you truly want what's best for Liam, we need to work together, not against each other. Laura nodded slowly, wiping her tears. You're right, I'm sorry for everything. Let's try to find a way to co-parent amicably. It was a start, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Trust had been shattered, and rebuilding it would take time if it was even possible. But for Liam's sake, I was willing to try. The next few weeks were a delicate dance of cooperation and cautious steps. Laura and I attended mediation sessions, trying to hammer out a fair custody arrangement. We agreed to alternate weeks with Liam, ensuring he spent ample time with both of us. We also decided to seek counseling, not necessarily to save our marriage, but to learn how to navigate this new, painful chapter of our lives as co-parents. As Christmas approached, I could see the strain this was putting on Liam. He was too young to understand the full scope of what was happening, but he sensed the tension. I made it my mission to ensure his holiday season was as joyful as possible, filling our days with decorating, baking cookies, and watching festive movies. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Liam snuggled up to me and asked, Daddy, will Santa still come if we don't all live together? My heart ached at his innocence. Of course, buddy. Santa will always come as long as we believe in him. And no matter what, Mommy and Daddy will always love you. His eyes brightened a little, and he hugged me tightly. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Liam, I whispered, holding him close. Christmas came and went, and despite the underlying tension, it was filled with moments of genuine joy and togetherness. Laura and I managed to put aside our differences for Liam's sake, creating a semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. As we moved into the new year, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead was uncertain and filled with challenges, but I was determined to face them head-on. For Liam, for myself, and for the chance to build a new, stronger future. Just as the new year was beginning to offer a sliver of normalcy, an unexpected twist disrupted our fragile peace. My boss called me into his office one Monday morning, his expression serious. William, I need to talk to you about something important, he began, gesturing for me to take a seat. Sure, what's up? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual despite the unease settling in my stomach. We've landed a major client on the West Coast, and they need someone on site to oversee the project for the next few months. Your name came up as the best fit for the job. I blinked, taken aback. The West Coast? But that's across the country. What about my responsibilities here? We've considered that, and while it's a significant change, this is a huge opportunity for both you and the company. We need someone with your expertise, William. It won't be easy, but it's a chance to advance your career. My mind raced. This was the worst possible timing given everything that was happening at home. I appreciate the opportunity, but I have a lot going on personally right now. I don't know if I can just up and leave. My boss leaned forward, his expression sympathetic. I understand, William, but this is a critical project, and we need our best people on it. Think it over. But please know that we really need you for this. I left his office with my mind in turmoil. The idea of leaving my son, especially during such a turbulent time, was almost unbearable. But the pressure from work and the potential career growth made it hard to refuse outright. That evening, I sat down with Laura after putting Liam to bed. I need to talk to you about something, I began, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Sure, what is it? She asked, her expression wary. I've been offered a business trip to the West Coast. They want me to oversee a major project for the next few months. It's a big opportunity, but the timing is terrible. Laura's eyes widened. The West Coast? That's a long way. I know, I said, running a hand through my hair. I don't want to leave Liam, especially now, but I also don't want to jeopardize my career. I'm torn, Laura. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. It's not ideal, but maybe it's for the best. It might give us some space to sort things out. I can handle things here with Liam. I was surprised by her willingness to cooperate, but also wary. Are you sure? This means you'll have to manage everything here, including Liam's routine. She nodded, a hint of determination in her eyes. I can do it, William. You focus on your work. We'll be okay. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations. I arranged for temporary leave from our custody agreement, ensuring everything was legally documented to avoid any misunderstandings. I spent as much time as possible with Liam, explaining that Daddy had to go away for work but would be back soon. Daddy, will you miss me? Liam asked one night as I tucked him into bed. More than anything, buddy, I replied, hugging him tightly. But I'll call you every day and we can video chat. It'll be like I'm not even gone. Promise? He asked, his big eyes filled with worry. I promise, I said, feeling my heart break a little. The day of my departure arrived too soon. Laura and Liam drove me to the airport, and the goodbyes were harder than I anticipated. As I hugged Liam one last time, I whispered, "Be good for Mommy, okay? I'll be back before you know it." "Okay, Daddy," he said, tears glistening in his eyes. "I love you." "I love you too, Liam," I said, fighting back my own tears. The flight across the country felt surreal. My mind was a whirl of thoughts and emotions, trying to balance the excitement of the new opportunity with the dread of being away from my son and the ongoing turmoil at home. I knew this trip could be a turning point for my career, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it might also be a turning point for my family, for better or worse. Arriving on the West Coast, I was thrust into a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and site visits. The project was demanding, leaving me little time to dwell on my personal troubles. But every night after the long days, I made sure to call Liam. Hearing his voice, even through a phone line, was a balm for my weary soul. "Hi, Daddy." Liam's voice was always bright and cheerful, filling me with a sense of warmth and connection. "Hey, buddy, how was your day?" I asked, eager to hear every detail. "It was good. Mommy and I went to the park and I played on the swings. I miss you, Daddy." "I miss you too, Liam. But remember, I'll be back soon. We can do all those fun things together again." The calls with Laura were brief and businesslike, discussing logistics and updates about Liam. She seemed to be handling things well, but there was always an underlying tension, a reminder of the fragile peace we were maintaining. One evening, as I was wrapping up a particularly exhausting day, I received a text from Laura. "We need to talk. Call me when you can." My heart sank. I dialed her number immediately, anxiety gnawing at me. "Laura, what's going on?" "William, I've been thinking a lot about everything," she said, her voice shaky. "This distance, it's making me realize how much I want to fix things between us. I know I messed up, but I want to try. For real this time." I was taken aback. "Laura, I don't know if it's that simple. There's a lot of hurt, a lot of broken trust." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, anything. I just don't want to lose you." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "I need time to think about this, Laura. We both need to make sure this is really what we want, and not just a reaction to the distance." "I understand," she said softly. "Just please, consider it. For us, for Liam." As I hung up, I felt more conflicted than ever. The trip had provided a temporary escape, but the reality of our situation was still waiting for me back home. I knew that the decisions we made in the coming weeks would shape the future of our family, and I wasn't sure if we could ever truly mend what had been broken. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling series of meetings, I decided to take a break and clear my mind. I found a small, cozy cafe along the coast, with large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the ocean. Sitting alone, I sipped my coffee and stared out at the waves, lost in thought about the mess my life had become. The door jingled as it opened, and I glanced up to see Sarah, one of my colleagues who had come on the business trip with our team. She spotted me and smiled, making her way over to my table. "Hey, William," she said cheerfully, taking the seat across from me. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all," I replied, managing a small smile. "How's it going?" "Busy as always," she said with a sigh. "But I couldn't resist taking a break. This place is a great find." We chatted about work for a few minutes, the easy conversation a welcome distraction. But Sarah soon picked up on my distracted demeanor. "Is everything okay, William?" she asked gently. "You seem off, like something's bothering you." I hesitated, unsure if I should share my personal troubles, but the weight of everything was becoming too much to bear alone. Taking a deep breath, I decided to open up. "It's a long story," I began, my voice tinged with exhaustion. "Laura and things have been really rough lately. I found out she's been cheating on me." Sarah's eyes widened with surprise and sympathy. "Oh, William, I'm so sorry. That's awful." "Yeah, it's been a nightmare," I admitted. "And now she's saying she wants to fix things, but I don't know if I can trust her again. It's all so confusing." Sarah reached across the table, placing a comforting hand on mine. "You're going through a lot. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." "Thanks, Sarah," I said, feeling a bit lighter from sharing my burden. "How about we take a break from all this?" she suggested. "Let's go for a walk along the coast, clear our heads a bit." I nodded, grateful for the distraction. We left the cafe and strolled along the shoreline, the sound of the waves and the salty breeze providing a soothing backdrop. We talked about everything and nothing, and for a while I felt a semblance of normalcy return. As the sun began to set, we headed back to the hotel. The conversation had been refreshing, but there was an underlying tension I couldn't quite place. When we reached the hotel lobby, Sarah turned to me with a hesitant smile. "William, I've been wanting to tell you something," she said softly. "I've admired you for a long time. Seeing you go through this has been hard for me too. I care about you, more than just a colleague." I stared at her, taken aback. "Sarah, I don't know what to say." She took a step closer, her eyes searching mine. "I know this might seem sudden, but I feel like there's something between us. And knowing what Laura did, it makes me want to be there for you even more." My mind was a whirl of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was Laura, who was begging for another chance, and on the other, the betrayal that had shattered my trust. Sarah's offer was tempting, a chance to feel desired and appreciated again. But deep down, I knew I couldn't make a decision like this out of anger or loneliness. "Sarah, I appreciate everything and I do care about you, but I'm still trying to figure things out with Laura. It wouldn't be fair to anyone if I rushed into something right now." She looked disappointed but nodded in understanding. "I get it, William. You're a good man and I respect that. Just know that I'm here for you, no matter what." "Thank you, Sarah," I said sincerely. "That means a lot." She smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Take care, William. And remember, if you ever need to talk or just need a friend, I'm here." With that, she gave me a gentle hug and went to her room. I stood in the hallway for a moment, grappling with the swirling thoughts in my head. The temptation had been real, but so was my commitment to finding the right path forward for myself and Liam. As I walked back to my room, I felt a sense of clarity. Despite the chaos and the heartache, I knew I had to make decisions based on what was best for Liam and my own integrity. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a while, I felt a sliver of hope that I could navigate it with my head held high. The next few days were a whirlwind of work. The project on the West Coast demanded my full attention, leaving me little time to dwell on the turmoil back home. However, in the quiet moments between meetings and site visits, my thoughts inevitably drifted back to Laura, Liam, and the mess that awaited my return. One evening, as I was wrapping up a call with the team, my phone buzzed with a message from Laura. "Can we talk? It's important." My heart sank. I couldn't ignore it, no matter how much I wanted to. I found a quiet corner in the hotel lobby and dialed her number. "William," she answered, her voice sounding small and tired. "Thank you for calling. I've been thinking a lot about everything and I need to know where we stand." "Laura, I've been thinking too," I replied, my voice steady. "But it's hard to figure things out from so far away. We need to be honest with each other if we're going to have any chance at fixing this." "I know," she said, a note of desperation in her voice. "I've been seeing a therapist trying to understand why I did what I did. I know I hurt you and I hate myself for it. But I still love you, William. I want our family to work." I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "I appreciate that you're trying, Laura. But trust is a fragile thing. It's not something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I understand," she said softly. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just need to know if you're willing to try too." I paused, considering my response. "I think we both need time, Laura. Time to heal and to figure out what we really want. I don't want to make promises I can't keep." She was silent for a moment, then said, "All right. I'll give you the time you need. Just know that I'm here, waiting and hoping." "Thank you," I said, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. "We'll talk more when I get back." After hanging up, I felt a sense of resolve. Laura's words had touched me, but I knew that actions spoke louder than words. Both of us had a long way to go before we could even think about reconciliation. The next day, I decided to take a break from the constant grind of work. Inspired by the walk with Sarah, I rented a bike and took a ride along the coast. The fresh air and the rhythmic sound of the waves provided a much-needed escape. As I pedaled, I thought about what it would take to rebuild my life, with or without Laura. When I returned to the hotel, I found a package waiting for me at the front desk. It was from my parents, who had heard about the business trip and wanted to send a care package. Inside were homemade cookies, a letter from my mom, and a drawing from Liam. The sight of his crayon scribbles brought a lump to my throat. Later that evening, as I sat in my room, I called my parents to thank them. My mom answered, her voice warm and comforting. "William, we're so glad you called. How are things going out there?" "It's been busy, Mom," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "But I'm managing. Thanks for the package. It was just what I needed." "We're always here for you, son," she said. "And remember, no matter what happens, you have a family who loves you." "I know, Mom. Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Can I talk to Liam?" "Of course, he's right here," she said, and I heard her call Liam to the phone. "Daddy!" Liam's voice was filled with excitement. "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" I asked, my heart lifting at the sound of his voice. "I made a new friend at school today, and Grandma and I baked cookies. I saved some for you when you come home." "That sounds great, Liam. I can't wait to see you and try those cookies." We talked for a few more minutes before Liam had to go to bed. After we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of determination. This was what I was fighting for, the chance to be the best father I could be for Liam. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the project, working long hours, but also taking time to reflect on what I wanted for my future. I continued my evening bike rides along the coast, finding solace in the simple act of movement and the beauty of the ocean. Sarah remained a supportive presence, respecting my boundaries, but always there if I needed a friend. We shared a few more walks and talks, but the line between us remained clear. I appreciated her understanding and the space she gave me. As the project neared completion, I knew it was time to face the next chapter of my life. I had made progress, both professionally and personally, but the real work lay ahead back home. It was time to return and confront the reality of my situation. On the flight back, I felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. I knew that the path forward wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head on. For Liam, for myself, and for the chance to rebuild my life with integrity and strength. When I landed and stepped off the plane, I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar air of home. It was time to take the next step, to face Laura, and to find a way to move forward, whatever that might look like. As I drove home from the airport, I felt a sense of calm resolve. No matter what lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face it. And with that thought, I turned onto my street, ready to begin the next chapter of my journey. When I returned home, the house felt strangely quiet. Laura greeted me at the door, but her demeanor was different from our last conversation. She looked tense and upset, her eyes avoiding mine. "Hi, William," she said softly, forcing a smile. "How was your trip?" "It was productive," I replied, watching her closely. "How are you? You seem off." She shook her head, brushing off my concern. "I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." It's been a lot to handle with you gone." I nodded, but I could tell there was more to it. "All right, let's talk later. I need to unpack." As I went through my suitcase, my mind kept drifting back to Laura. Something was definitely wrong. She had sounded hopeful on the phone, but now she seemed distant and troubled. I decided to give her some space, hoping she would open up when she was ready. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, the silence between us was palpable. Liam chatted about his day at school, blissfully unaware of the tension. After putting him to bed, I found Laura sitting on the couch staring blankly at the TV. "Laura, we need to talk," I said gently, sitting down next to her. "I can tell something's bothering you." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's nothing, William, really." I placed a hand on her arm. "Please, Laura, I can't help if I don't know what's going on." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and frustration. "It's just complicated. I don't want to drag you into it. We're in this together," I insisted. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Laura took a deep breath, finally meeting my gaze. "All right, the waiter. He came by a few days ago. He's been calling and texting nonstop, trying to get me to leave you and go with him. He keeps reminding me of the times we spent together, trying to convince me that I'll be happier with him." Anger flared within me, but I kept my voice calm. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to stop, that I'm trying to fix things with you," she said, her voice trembling. "But he's persistent. He won't take no for an answer." "Where is he now?" I asked, feeling a surge of protectiveness and determination. "I don't know," she admitted. "He said he'd be around and that he wouldn't give up." I stood up, my mind racing. "All right, I'll handle this. He has no right to disrupt our lives like this." "William, please be careful," Laura said, worry etched on her face. "I don't want things to get worse." "I won't do anything reckless," I assured her. "But I need to make it clear to him that he's not welcome in our lives." The next day, I decided to find the waiter and put an end to his interference. I went to the restaurant where he worked, determined to confront him. As I walked in, the familiar surroundings felt different, tainted by the knowledge of what had transpired here. I spotted him near the bar, chatting with a colleague. When he saw me, his expression shifted from surprise to annoyance. He walked over, a smug look on his face. "William," he said coolly, "what brings you here?" "We need to talk," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Outside." He glanced around, then nodded, following me out to the parking lot. Once we were alone, I turned to face him. "You need to leave Laura alone," I said, my voice firm. "She's made it clear that she doesn't want anything to do with you." He smirked, leaning against a car. "You think you can just walk back into her life and everything will be fine? She deserves better than you." "That's for her to decide," I replied, trying to keep my anger in check. "She's chosen to try and fix things with me. You need to respect that." "Respect?" he scoffed. "Like you respected her? If you were so perfect, she wouldn't have come to me in the first place." His words stung, but I didn't let them show. "We all make mistakes, but she's trying to make things right. You need to back off." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Or what? You'll make me?" I stood my ground, meeting his gaze. "If you continue to harass her, I'll involve the authorities. This is your warning. Stay away from my family." For a moment he looked like he might argue, but then he shrugged, backing off. "Fine, but don't think this is over." "It is over," I said firmly. "Stay away from Laura." I walked away, my heart pounding. Confronting him had been necessary, but I knew this wasn't the end. There were still many issues to resolve at home, and this was just one step in the process. When I returned home, Laura was waiting anxiously. "Did you find him?" she asked. "Yes," I said, sitting down beside her. "I told him to stay away. If he tries anything else, we'll take legal action." She sighed, relief and worry mingling in her expression. "Thank you, William. I know this isn't easy." "No, it's not," I agreed. "But we need to focus on us now, on fixing what's broken." Laura nodded, a determined look in her eyes. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes." We still had a long road ahead, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of hope. We were facing our problems head-on together. And maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild the trust and love that had been lost. In the days that followed, the tension between Laura and me began to ease, albeit slowly. The confrontation with the waiter had been a necessary step, but it was just the beginning of our journey toward healing. We knew that to rebuild our relationship, we had to address the deeper issues that had led us to this point. Laura and I agreed to start couples counseling, hoping that a professional could help us navigate the rocky terrain of our marriage. Our first session was nerve-wracking. Sitting in the therapist's office with its soothing pastel walls and comfortable furniture, we both felt exposed and vulnerable. "Welcome, Laura and William," the therapist, Dr. Harris, greeted us warmly. "I'm glad you've taken this step. It's a sign that you both want to work on your relationship. Let's start by talking about what brings you here." Laura glanced at me and I nodded, encouraging her to speak first. She took a deep breath and began. "I made a terrible mistake. I betrayed William's trust and I regret it deeply. I want to make things right, but I don't know how to start." Dr. Harris nodded, her expression compassionate. "Acknowledging the mistake is an important first step, Laura. Trust is fragile, and rebuilding it takes time and effort from both partners." I spoke next, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I feel hurt and betrayed, but I also believe that our marriage is worth fighting for. We have a son who needs us, and I want to find a way to move forward." Dr. Harris guided us through the session, encouraging us to communicate openly and honestly. It was difficult, but also cathartic. We talked about the pain, the anger, and the underlying issues that had been festering for years. By the end of the session, we felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps, with time and effort, we could rebuild our broken relationship. Back at home, we made a conscious effort to spend more quality time together as a family. We planned outings with Liam, played board games, and even started cooking meals together. These small moments of normalcy helped to strengthen our bond, reminding us of the love and connection that had brought us together in the first place. One evening, after putting Liam to bed, Laura and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the air was warm and still. "Do you think we can really make this work?" Laura asked softly, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. "I think we can," I replied, taking her hand in mine. "It's going to take time and a lot of hard work, but I believe in us. We have to keep communicating and being honest with each other." Laura nodded, squeezing my hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, William. I don't want to lose what we have." As the weeks turned into months, we continued our counseling sessions and worked on rebuilding our trust. There were setbacks and difficult conversations, but we faced them together, determined to make our marriage stronger than before. One weekend, we decided to take a short trip to the mountains, just the three of us. It was a chance to escape the daily grind and reconnect as a family. We rented a cozy cabin and spent our days hiking, fishing, and enjoying the tranquility of nature. On the second day of our trip, we found a secluded spot by a crystal-clear lake. Liam was excited to try fishing, and Laura and I set up a picnic nearby. As we watched Liam cast his line into the water, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember the first time we went camping together?" she asked, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Of course," I said, chuckling. "You insisted on bringing a hairdryer even though there was no electricity." She laughed, the sound bringing back fond memories. I was so naive. But that trip was magical. We spent hours talking by the campfire, dreaming about our future. "I remember," I said, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "Those were simpler times." Laura's smile faded slightly. "I want to get back to that, William, to us. I know we can't erase the past, but we can build a better future." "I want that too," I said, squeezing her hand. "And we're taking the right steps. It won't be easy, but we're doing it together." As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the lake, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We were far from perfect, but we were trying. And sometimes that's all that mattered. Returning from the trip, we continued to make progress. Laura found a new job, distancing herself from the environment where the affair had begun. I focused on my work but made sure to prioritize my family. We found a balance that allowed us to grow individually and as a couple. One evening, after another counseling session, Laura and I sat down to review our progress. Dr. Harris had given us exercises to improve our communication and trust, and we were seeing the benefits. "William," Laura said, her voice filled with emotion, "I know I've hurt you deeply, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your willingness to give us another chance. You've shown incredible strength and grace." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace. "Thank you, Laura, and I appreciate the effort you're putting in to make things right. We still have a long way to go, but I believe we can get there." As we embraced, I realized that the journey we were on was not just about healing from the past, but about building a future that was stronger and more resilient. Our love had been tested, but it had also been renewed. In the end, it was the small moments of connection, the shared laughter, and the commitment to growth that kept us moving forward. We had faced the storm and emerged on the other side, ready to embrace whatever came next. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. We were a family bound by love, determination, and the belief that we could overcome anything together. Returning home from our rejuvenating trip to the mountains, I felt a renewed sense of hope for our future. The time away had given us the opportunity to reconnect as a family, and I believed we were on the right path to healing. But the peace we had found was abruptly shattered the next morning. As I stepped outside to grab the newspaper, I froze in shock. Our car, parked in the driveway, was covered in bright red paint. The word cheater was scrawled across the hood, and beneath it, in smaller letters, was written, "You're Tilly." My heart pounded in my chest as I called out to Laura. She came running, and her gasp of horror mirrored my own feelings. "What? Who did this?" she stammered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I have a pretty good idea," I said grimly, thinking of the waiter. "He's trying to stir up trouble, to make you think I've been unfaithful." Laura's face paled, her eyes filling with tears. "William, why would he do this? Why would he go to such lengths?" "He's desperate," I replied, anger and frustration coursing through me. "He wants to break us apart, and this is his way of planting doubt in your mind." Laura shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. "But Tilly, who is she? Why would he use that name?" "I don't know, Laura," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's a lie. You know I haven't been unfaithful." She looked at me, torn between disbelief and fear. "But how can I be sure? After everything that's happened, how can I trust that this is just a trick?" I took a deep breath, stepping closer to her. "Because I'm telling you the truth. We've been working so hard to rebuild our trust, and you have to believe me. This is just a desperate attempt to tear us apart." Laura stared at the car, her expression conflicted. "I want to believe you, William, but it's so hard with everything that's happened. Seeing this, it just brings back all the doubt and pain." "I understand," I said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But we can't let him win. We have to stay strong and trust each other." She nodded slowly, wiping away her tears. "You're right, we can't let him get to us. But it's so hard, William." "I know it is," I said, pulling her into a hug. "But we're in this together. We'll get through it." After a long embrace, we called the police to report the vandalism. The officer who arrived took our statement and assured us they would investigate. But I knew it would be difficult to prove anything without solid evidence. Once the police left, we spent the rest of the morning cleaning the car. The paint was stubborn, but with some effort we managed to scrub it off. It was a tedious and frustrating task, but it also gave us time to talk. "William," Laura said as she wiped a streak of paint from the windshield, "I'm sorry for doubting you. It's just, after everything, I'm still so scared of being hurt again." "I understand, Laura," I said, my voice gentle. "And I'm sorry that my past actions have made you feel this way. But I promise you I'm committed to making this work." She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both hope and fear. "I believe you. And I'm committed too. We just have to keep working on it." We finished cleaning the car, and by the time we were done, the sun was high in the sky. Despite the frustration and anger the incident had caused, I felt a sense of resolve. We had faced another challenge and come out stronger, refusing to let the waiter's attempts to sabotage us succeed. The following days were tense, but Laura and I made a conscious effort to communicate more openly. We attended our counseling sessions and worked on rebuilding our trust. However, the memory of the vandalism lingered. a constant reminder of the fragility of our progress. One evening as we sat on the porch after dinner, Laura turned to me with a serious expression. "William, I've been thinking, maybe we should move. Start fresh somewhere new, away from all the reminders of what happened." I considered her suggestion. That might be a good idea. A new environment could help us focus on rebuilding without the constant reminders of the past. Laura nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Let's look into it. I want us to have the best chance possible to make this work." As we began exploring the possibility of moving, I felt a renewed sense of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but a fresh start could be exactly what we needed to leave the past behind and build a stronger future. We kept a close eye on our surroundings, and I took precautions to ensure our safety. I installed security cameras around the house and made sure we were vigilant about who we interacted with. The waiter's attempt to drive a wedge between us had failed, but I wasn't taking any chances. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the fear and tension began to fade. Laura and I found a new home in a quiet neighborhood, far from the painful memories of the past. The move was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild our lives and our trust in each other. As we settled into our new home, we continued our counseling sessions and worked on strengthening our relationship. It wasn't always easy, but we were committed to making it work. Liam adjusted well to the new environment, and seeing his happiness reinforced our decision to move. One evening, as we sat on the porch of our new home, watching Liam play in the yard, Laura turned to me with a smile. "William, I think we're going to be okay. We've come so far, and I believe we can keep moving forward." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace. "I believe that too, Laura. We faced so many challenges, but we've come out stronger, and will continue to do so. Our journey was far from over, but we had taken significant steps toward healing and rebuilding. We had faced betrayal, doubt, and sabotage, but our commitment to each other and our family had carried us through. As the sun set over our new home, I felt a sense of gratitude for the second chance we had been given. Our love had been tested, but it had also been strengthened. Together, we would continue to face whatever challenges came our way, knowing that we had the resilience and determination to overcome them. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt confident that we could navigate it together. With love, trust, and a renewed sense of hope, we were ready to embrace whatever the future held. After months of hard work, counseling, and a fresh start in a new home, things seemed to be finally falling into place for Laura and me. Our new neighborhood was peaceful, and we were settling into a routine that felt stable and hopeful. Even the waiter had decided that his freedom was worth more than pursuing Laura, and he had finally left us alone. Life was beginning to feel normal again. One evening, Laura and her friends decided to celebrate our new beginning with a night out at a local bar. I encouraged her to go, thinking it would be good for her to unwind and enjoy some time with her friends. Little did I know that this night out would set off a chain of events that would shatter our progress once again. The bar they chose was lively and popular, known for its vibrant atmosphere and friendly staff. Laura and her friends were in high spirits, toasting to new beginnings and brighter futures. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed, the mood grew more relaxed and carefree. It was then that the owner of the bar, a charming man named Jack, and his son Matt, a tall and attractive basketball player, joined their table. Jack and Matt were well known in the community, their easygoing nature and good looks making them popular with the patrons. Laura, already tipsy, found herself drawn to Matt's magnetic presence. Matt seemed to take a particular interest in Laura, and as the night progressed, they spent more and more time talking and laughing together. Her friends, caught up in their own fun, didn't notice the growing connection between the two. It was as if Matt had bewitched her, and Laura, vulnerable and longing for excitement, couldn't resist. They exchanged numbers at the end of the night, and over the next few weeks, they began meeting in secret. Laura was careful to keep this new affair hidden, knowing that another betrayal would destroy the fragile trust we had rebuilt. But no matter how careful she was, secrets have a way of coming to light. 2 months later, I found out by sheer chance. I was at the grocery store when I ran into one of Laura's friends, Sarah. We chatted briefly, and she mentioned how much fun they had had at the bar that night. "You should have seen Laura," she said with a laugh. She and Matt were practically inseparable. It was like they were made for each other. My heart sank. Matt? Who's Matt? Sarah looked surprised. You know, the bar owner's son. Tall, dark hair, basketball player. He and Laura hit it off that night. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. Trying to keep my voice steady, I asked, "Do you know if they've been seeing each other since then?" Sarah's expression shifted to one of concern. "I'm not sure, William. I assumed you knew. Maybe it's just friendly." I forced a smile. "Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it." As soon as I got home, I confronted Laura. She tried to deny it at first, but the guilt was written all over her face. Eventually, she broke down and confessed everything. "I'm so sorry, William," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just, he was there and I felt drawn to him. I couldn't help myself." I stood there numb, the familiar sting of betrayal coursing through me. "Laura, after everything we've been through, how could you do this again?" "I don't know," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I've been trying so hard, but I felt so lost. Please believe me, I didn't want to hurt you." I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "We've been working so hard to rebuild our trust, to move forward, and you threw it all away for a fling?" "It wasn't just a fling," she whispered. "I don't know what it was, but it wasn't just that." The weight of her words hung in the air, and I realized that no matter what she said, the damage was done. This time it felt different. The first betrayal had been a painful wake-up call, but this one felt like the final blow. "I need some time to think," I said, my voice hollow. "I don't know if I can do this again." Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I'm so sorry, William. I love you, and I want to make this right. But I understand if you can't forgive me." As I walked out of the house, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. The fresh start we had worked so hard for now felt tainted, and I wasn't sure if our relationship could survive another betrayal. Over the next few days, I stayed with a friend, trying to process everything. I spoke with our therapist, seeking guidance and clarity. The pain of Laura's actions was overwhelming, but I needed to make a decision for myself and for Liam. When I finally returned home, Laura was waiting, her eyes filled with remorse. "William, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. Please just give me one more chance." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "Laura, I don't know if I can. Trust is something that once broken is almost impossible to fully repair. I need to think about what's best for Liam and for myself." She nodded, her expression resigned. "I understand. Just know that I love you and I'm truly sorry." As we sat in silence, the weight of the decision before me pressed down. The road ahead was uncertain, and I knew that whatever path I chose, it would not be easy. But I was determined to find a way forward, for Liam's sake, and for my own. In that moment, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Trust, respect, and commitment are just as crucial, and without them, even the strongest love can falter. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it with a renewed sense of determination and clarity. In the weeks following Laura's second betrayal, the atmosphere at home was thick with tension and uncertainty. Laura was visibly distraught, but her attempts to apologize and make amends felt hollow. Matt, unlike the waiter, had seemingly lost interest in her after their encounter, adding to her sense of guilt and worthlessness. It was a painful reminder of how fragile our efforts to rebuild had been. Feeling lost and desperate for guidance, I decided to reach out to an old friend from high school, Matthew. Matthew and I had been close during our school years, and I remembered how he had gone through a similar experience of betrayal. His girlfriend in the 11th grade had cheated on him, and he had managed to cope and move on with remarkable resilience. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. As I walked in, Matthew stood up to greet me with a warm smile. He hadn't changed much over the years, still possessing the same calm and reassuring presence that had made him such a good friend. "William, it's been too long," he said, pulling me into a hug. "How have you been, man?" I sighed, giving him a tired smile. "I've been better, Matthew. A lot's happened, and I really need your advice." We sat down, ordered our drinks, and I began to recount everything that had transpired. Matthew listened intently, nodding occasionally and letting me pour out my heart. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "Man, you've been through the ringer," he said sympathetically. "I'm really sorry to hear all this." "Yeah, it's been rough," I admitted. "I just don't know what to do anymore. I thought we were making progress, but now it feels like we're back to square one. I don't know if I can go through this again." Matthew took a sip of his coffee, considering his words. "I get it. Betrayal cuts deep, and it's hard to move past it. When it happened to me, I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. But you know what helped me the most?" "What?" I asked, eager for any insight he could offer. "Focusing on myself," he said simply. "I realized that I needed to heal and find my own strength before I could even think about rebuilding trust with someone else. I took time to pursue my interests, connect with supportive friends and family, and really reflect on what I wanted in a relationship." I nodded, absorbing his advice. "That makes sense, but it's hard when you're married and there's a child involved. I want to do what's best for Liam." "Of course," Matthew agreed. "Liam's well-being is the most important thing. But remember, a happy and healthy parent is crucial for a happy and healthy child. If you're constantly in a state of turmoil, it's going to affect him too. Sometimes taking a step back and focusing on your own healing can create a better environment for both of you." "How did you deal with the anger and resentment?" I asked, feeling the weight of those emotions still bearing down on me. "It took time," Matthew admitted. "I allowed myself to feel those emotions without letting them consume me. Therapy helped a lot, giving me a safe space to process everything. And eventually, I reached a point where I could forgive, not just her, but myself too. I realized that holding on to that anger was only hurting me." I sat in silence for a moment, considering his words. "Forgiveness. That's a tough one." "It is," Matthew agreed, "but it's also liberating. It doesn't mean you have to forget or excuse what happened. It just means you're choosing to let go of the burden of anger and pain. You're freeing yourself to move forward." I sighed, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. "I think you're right. I've been so focused on fixing things with Laura that I haven't taken the time to heal myself." "Exactly," Matthew said, smiling encouragingly. "You have to take care of yourself first, William. Whether or not you and Laura stay together, you need to be whole and strong for Liam and for yourself." As we continued talking, I felt a sense of clarity begin to form. Matthew's advice was simple yet profound. Focus on my own healing, allow myself to feel and process my emotions, and prioritize my well-being and that of my son. It was a path that seemed daunting, but also necessary. Before we parted ways, Matthew gave me a final piece of advice. "Take it one day at a time, William. There's no rush to figure everything out. Be kind to yourself and trust that you'll find the right path forward." "Thanks, Matthew," I said sincerely. "Your advice means a lot to me. I appreciate you taking the time to talk." "Anytime, man," he replied, giving me a reassuring pat on the back. "You're stronger than you think. Just keep moving forward." As I drove home, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I realized that I needed to take a step back from trying to fix everything with Laura and focus on my own healing. I needed to be strong for Liam and for myself, and only then could I make clear and informed decisions about our future. When I walked through the door, Laura was waiting, her eyes filled with worry and remorse. "How did it go?" she asked hesitantly. "It was good," I replied, feeling a sense of calm. "I talked to Matthew and he gave me some valuable advice. We need to take things one day at a time. Right now, I need to focus on healing myself." Laura nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I want to support you in any way I can." "Thank you," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. "We'll get through this, Laura, one step at a time." As I looked around our home, I realized that the journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it with a renewed sense of strength and purpose. For Liam, for myself, and for the possibility of a brighter future. The days passed with a fragile sense of peace, but that tranquility was shattered once again by an unexpected turn of events. Laura began to feel unwell, complaining of persistent discomfort and unusual symptoms. She initially brushed it off as stress or a minor illness, but when the symptoms worsened, she finally went to see a doctor. A week later, Laura sat me down, her face pale and her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and shame. "William, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice trembling. "I went to the doctor and they found something." My heart sank. "What is it, Laura? What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. "I have an STD. Matt convinced me not to use protection, saying it would make things more intense, and now I've developed complications." The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Complications? What kind of complications? "The doctor said it's serious," she whispered. "I need treatment, and it's going to be a long process. I'm so sorry, William. I never wanted this to happen." I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. But despite everything, I knew I couldn't turn my back on her. She was the mother of my child, and she needed help. "We'll get through this, Laura. But you need to follow the doctor's orders and take care of yourself." Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, William. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm so grateful for it." The next few weeks were incredibly challenging. Laura's condition required frequent visits to the doctor, medication, and careful monitoring. I found myself taking on more responsibilities at home, caring for Liam and supporting Laura through her treatment. It was exhausting, but I knew it was necessary. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Laura called out from the living room, "William, can you help me with something?" I wiped my hands on a towel and went to her side. She was sitting on the couch looking frail and tired. "What do you need?" I need some help getting comfortable," she said, her voice weak. "It hurts to move around too much." I gently helped her adjust her position, making sure she was comfortable. "Is that better?" She nodded, a small smile of gratitude on her lips. "Thank you, William. I don't know what I would do without you." As I returned to the kitchen, I felt a pang of sorrow. Our relationship was far from perfect, and the betrayals had left deep scars. But seeing Laura in such a vulnerable state reminded me of the vows we had taken to support each other in sickness and in health. Despite everything, I couldn't abandon her now. Over time, Laura's condition began to improve. The treatments were working and she slowly regained her strength. Throughout this ordeal, our conversations became more open and honest. We talked about our fears, our hopes, and the mistakes we had made. It was painful, but it was also necessary for our healing. One evening, after putting Liam to bed, Laura and I sat down to talk. "William, I want to thank you for everything you've done," she said, her eyes filled with sincerity. "I know I've hurt you deeply, but your support means the world to me." "I did it for Liam and because it's the right thing to do," I replied. "But Laura, we need to be honest with ourselves. Our relationship has been through so much, and I don't know if we can go back to what it was." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize that I need to work on myself. I need to be a better person for Liam and for myself." "I think that's a good idea," I said softly. "We both need to focus on healing, individually and together. Maybe some time apart would help us figure things out." Laura looked down, her shoulders slumping. "I agree. Maybe some space will give us the clarity we need." In the weeks that followed, we began to explore the possibility of living separately for a while. It was a difficult decision, but we both knew it was necessary for our own well-being and for Liam's sake. We found a small apartment nearby where Laura could stay, allowing her to focus on her recovery and personal growth. As we helped Laura move into her new place, there was a sense of bittersweet resolution. It wasn't the ending I had hoped for, but it was a step towards healing and finding a new path forward. "I'll always be here for you, Laura," I said as we finished unpacking the last of her things. "No matter what happens, we'll always be connected through Liam." "Thank you, William," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. "I hope this time apart will help us both find the peace and happiness we deserve." As I drove back to our house, I felt a sense of hope mingled with sadness. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I knew it was the right choice. With time, patience, and self-reflection, I believed that both Laura and I could find the strength to move forward and create a better future for ourselves and for Liam. Life had taken many unexpected turns for my family, and as I sit here reflecting on the journey, I know that many men would condemn me for my decisions. After 2 betrayals, choosing to stay with Laura and support her through her illness wasn't an easy choice. But it was a choice I made for the sake of our son Liam and the vows I had once taken. Despite the heartache and challenges, I couldn't abandon her in her time of need. Now Laura and I live separately. She resides in a small apartment nearby, focusing on her recovery and personal growth, while I remain in our family home, providing a stable environment for Liam. Our relationship is complicated, but we're committed to co-parenting and supporting each other as best as we can. The road has been difficult, but we've found a fragile peace in our new arrangement. Today, Liam and I are sitting near a tranquil pond fishing. The sun is shining and there's a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. It's a peaceful moment, a respite from the chaos that has enveloped our lives. "Daddy," Liam asks, his voice curious, "why have you and Mommy been living separately for so long?" I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of his question. It's a conversation I've known we would have eventually, but finding the right words is challenging. I want to be honest without burdening him with too much information. "Well, buddy," I begin, choosing my words carefully, "sometimes grown-ups go through difficult times. Your mom and I love you very much, and we both want what's best for you. Right now, living separately helps us both work on becoming better people and better parents for you." Liam looks thoughtful, his fishing rod resting on his lap. "But do you still love each other?" I smile gently, touched by his innocence. "Love can be complicated, Liam. Your mom and I care about each other, and we both care about you more than anything. Sometimes living apart can help us understand things better and figure out what we need to do to be happy." He nods slowly, processing my words. "Will you ever live together again?" "I don't know," I admit, my voice soft. "We're taking things one day at a time. The important thing is that you know we both love you very much, and will always be here for you." Liam seems to accept my answer, turning his attention back to his fishing rod. "Okay, Daddy." As we sit there watching the ripples in the pond and waiting for a fish to bite, I feel a sense of calm. The journey has been long and filled with hardships, but moments like this remind me of what truly matters. My relationship with Liam, our bond, and his happiness are my top priorities. Despite the betrayals and the pain, I've chosen a path that feels right for me. Staying with Laura, even though we live separately, is a testament to the complexity of love, forgiveness, and commitment. It may not be the traditional path, and many might judge my decisions, but it's a path that allows for healing, growth, and the possibility of a brighter future. As the sun sets over the pond, casting a warm glow over the water, I feel a sense of hope. The future is uncertain, but with patience, understanding, and love, I believe we can navigate whatever comes our way. For Liam, for myself, and for the possibility of reconciliation and healing, I am ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. And so, as we reel in our lines and pack up our fishing gear, I take Liam's hand, feeling grateful for this moment of peace and connection. We walk back home, knowing that while the road may be tough, we're moving forward together, one step at a time.